Hi folks, welcome to Tim Scott Uncancelled with me, Tim Scott. We've got another great show for you today with some really good stories, and I think you're going to enjoy our guest, Dinah Glover. Yes, hi folks, Tim Scott again with another episode of Tim Scott Uncancelled. And a big welcome to you. Thanks for watching, whoever you are, wherever you are, and however you are joining us. And talking of joining us, one of the great ways you can keep in touch with us is if you go to YouTube and in the search box type in Unprecedented TV, and then give us a cheeky follow, and you can then keep in touch with us. So another show and another fantastic series of articles, and I think you're going to like our guest, Dinah Glover, who will be joining us in a minute. So the format is the same as ever, and the constant theme of this show is how Britain has so much going for it, but yet we have so many problems. But these are not insoluble, and with the right political will, this show is putting forward some of the solutions. So where are we, and what a time it is, what a time to be alive. And the crisis in the Middle East, which is one of the stories we're going to look at in a little bit more detail, amongst others, that rumbles on. I mean, personally, I'm happy for Britain not to be involved in the strikes against the Islamic regime, the Islamist, the terrible, dreadful, murderous Islamist regime in Iran. I'm happy for Britain not to be involved in that, but we do have interests in the region. We have a couple of bases on Cyprus, bases where I served back in the day with my time in the army. I did a UN peacekeeping tour there as well. We have hundreds of thousands of expats living in the Gulf. And we also have the small fact that we are an island and we import half of our food by sea. We import liquefied natural gas from Qatar in the Gulf, a complete lunacy, if you ask me, when we have our own gas right here underneath our feet and in the North Sea. Ed Miliband refuses to take advantage of that, but a lot of that comes by sea. And we have other interests too. And the naval response, we need a navy. We have undersea cables, much of our our internet, much of our internet access, much of our business and financial activity and information comes via these undersea cables to the USA and to Europe. These internet cables are very, very easily sabotageable. So we need a navy. And the Navy's response under this government has been completely inadequate and lackluster. When Keir Starmer said that he was going to try and stop the boats, I hadn't realized that the boats he was going to try and stop were our own navies. And we really do think it's such a great pity to see the Navy struggling under this government and under successive Tory cuts on our defence for years to even get one ship out to sea, HMS Dragon. So there's a lot going on there, folks. And our response, I think, has really, really been poor. The French response, by the way, I think has been really good. Cyprus has had a visit from Macron, and they have had quite good and quite extensive naval assets out in the region. We have 3,500 troops on our bases on Cyprus. The RAF have been doing a good job, to be fair, flying from RAF Akrotiri on Cyprus and the base on Qatar. We've got about 18 planes out there, which I think is enough. And they have been doing a great job shooting down drones and other missiles heading for some of our Middle Eastern allies. We do have interests out there with people like Bahrain and Jordan. So that's my intro. And here we have, yes, these are the Iranian drones. They make them themselves, and they're very, very simple, easy, and cheap to make. Rather remind me of the so-called doodlebugs of World War II fame or infamy that the Germans sent over here. So very, very disappointed in Britain's lacklustre response, whilst I must emphasise, very happy for us to stay out of the strikes against the Iranian regime. And I do have very mixed feelings about what we're doing out there in the Gulf, or what's happening out there in the Gulf. In one sense, we wish it well, but we also worry about what happened to Iraq and Libya. Both countries were reduced to chaos by Western intervention. Okay, so enough from me. Time to introduce our guest for the week, Dinah Glover. Someone I've known for a while, and she does have some great experience. She's been involved in Conservative Party candidate selection before, and also had, during the time of Brexit, had a great occasion with regards to Theresa May's Brexit deal, which she can tell us about in a minute. But Dinah, thanks for joining us and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tim. Lovely to be on.
Thank you. And what have you been up to lately, and where can people find you?
We've moved down from I almost want to say the Islamic Republic of Tar Hamlets to the West Country. And during that time, I've left the Conservative Party and joined Reform, but I didn't do that in one smooth move. I took the decision to leave the Conservative Party, mainly because I just thought that Kemi Badenoch was not articulating a vision. But the overriding reason was that it was very obvious to me that even if the Conservative Party was to win the next election, it would not be a Conservative Party that I would agree with or would be proud of, because of the way that they're doing their selections. So I decided I had to leave the Conservative Party, and then I did take the decision to join Reform, but they were sort of two separate decisions as such.
Yeah, Diana, I kind of agree with you, really. I think even if the Conservatives won a majority again, having been in for 14 years, I wouldn't trust them to do the right thing. But you had a bit of experience there, didn't you, when you were in the Conservatives with candidate selection? Of course, these people end up as MPs.
They do. Not as many of them as they'd hoped last time. But yes, I was a candidate assessor for the last Parliament. And it was an interesting job. But what shocked me was how little politics was involved with it. In the interview, there was only one political question, which I had brought forward in the interview. And that was the only way that anyone was challenged over their views. And that was when they told me to step away, because apparently I was too confrontational. What I did, yes, I mean, gosh, politicians being challenged. So I would actually ask them for their reasoning, which did not have to conform to my views. What they had to do in my book was that they had to defend their arguments and actually be able to put forward a justifiable position. Often they couldn't. And
really?
They often really couldn't put that forward. And then when we lost the election, they put in place the new team for candidate selection.
Yeah. So this is the current team.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so the chairman of the candidates team is the Honourable Claire Hambro, who I've never heard articulate a political view all the time I've known her. But worse, her deputy is a rank Remainer who, during one conference, actually got up and left a private dinner because the couple they were dining with said they'd voted leave. And that is those are the two people. Apparently, Lotto she has her own deputy, who's a nice guy, but I would definitely not say was a right winger. He is very, very definitely on the left of the party.
By
So
Lotta, you mean leader of the opposition's office? Yeah. Okay. And I mean, sadly, this doesn't surprise me. And Nigel has said, for example, the Conservative Party should fold up and half of them should join Reform and the other half should join the Lib Dems. But also tell us about this, the leadership and the intervention that you showed, Dinah, on Theresa May's Brexit deal, because I think that was quite a thing that you did there. Just tell people a little bit about that.
Yes. So back in the day, having led Vote Leave in Tower Hamlets, and we all know the history as to what happened, and that they were struggling to get Brexit through Parliament and getting a deal with the EU. So I was in touch with all of the ERG, working particularly with Steve Baker, who was chairman at the time. And I came up with this idea that the problem was that Theresa May was not doing what the Conservative Brexiteers wanted her to do. She was coming up with checkers, if you remember. And so I looked up the National Convention Constitution, and there isn't actually anything that I could do to actually stop Theresa May. But what I saw was you could ask for a meeting. You could have a petition to, I think it was of 85 association chairmen and officers. So we got a team together to put this, get this petition. And as fast as we were putting the names on, Brandon Lewis, who was chairman at the time, was having the names taken off. People were being threatened. Friends of mine that had actually signed the petition were being threatened that they would have no career in the Conservative Party. So it was really fraught times, and eventually we got it agreed that there was a figure there, and if they keep knocking them off, we'll keep adding them. So we came to a understanding that we were there. We set a meeting, and that was appalling. That was absolutely appalling, because that meeting of the National Convention was meant to be when the vote would be as to whether the party had confidence in Theresa May. Theresa May knew that she could not face that meeting, and it was on the grid at number 10 that was sort of the end time. As it was, she went before that. So the meeting, I said to the chairman of the National Convention, it should be a hustings for all the candidates. And so we had that hustings, and we put in loads of questions about what was their position on Brexit and checkers. Not one of those questions was asked. We had loads of political questions asked by former members of the officers of the National Convention.
Thanks. Okay, thank you, Dinah. So you basically engineered this meeting of the Conservative Party's national, and this isn't just some arcane, obscure internal thing. I mean, it played a role in Theresa May's demise, in the demise of her deal, and it encouraged the Spartans, who made sure the 28 Conservative MPs who made sure that Theresa May's dreadful deal was voted down. So yes, you played quite a role there, and it was a significant thing in the evolution and the winning of Brexit, wasn't it? So good stuff. Thank you. Well, look, we must move on. So we've got some great stories for you today. As ever, we go through the newspapers so you don't have to, and we go behind the front pages. So we've got some great stories for you from the newspapers, and we try to find some of the deeper stories. So let's come to the first one. And talking of the Conservatives, we've got this story here This is from The Sun. Kemi fuels 5p cut call. Kemi Badenoch fills up a lorry with diesel as she calls on the government to keep the 5p fuel duty discount. Now, sadly, I watch PMQs every week. I mean, it really is awful. And if this is Parliament's shop window, I mean, why on earth would you want to go in? I mean, how and I think she on Wednesday the other day, the last PMQs, she started off with this question. I think she missed a trick there. She should have asked if, when this Mandelson report comes out, it turns out you were pre-warned, will you resign? But she's starting off on fuel. But how do you, I mean, generally, as you can probably take more of a dispassionate view of the Tories now, Dinah. How do you think Kemi's doing, or not?
Well, I voted for Robert Jenrick. I thought he had more of the right answers. I started off supporting Suella, who did have the numbers to stand, but decided that perhaps the party wasn't in the right place. Excuse me. Kemi Badenoch, I thought she started off so slowly. We really, or the Conservatives really needed to sort out what they believed in, because they had a belief deficit. She went a long way not to do this, and I think this hindered her at the beginning because she couldn't say anything because she had no policies. She is finally starting to announce some policies, and I think, actually, if I'm being fair, at conference last year, her conference speech was good. I mean, that was good, but I don't think that she's managing to put together a whole vision that allows people to understand where the Conservatives are going and what they particularly want to achieve. I think she's failed in that, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think she has picked up a bit, Dinah, but not before time.
Yeah.
And who's advising her? I would love to know. You mentioned that earlier. And I think I still have really very little confidence in the Conservatives. We're both former Conservative activists, and I just wouldn't trust them. And they're still marooned at 17-18% in the polls, aren't they?
Yes. She doesn't seem to be able to get above that. Excuse me. I think a lot of it is because she came in so slowly. And that's, I don't think she actually realised that the problem is you've got probably a 3-month window to really excite people and to make a mark. She failed to make that mark, so she is always playing catch up. Yeah,
I think so. Let's see. I mean, there are some good Conservative MPs, aren't there?
I believe so.
There's rumour to be. There's rumour to be.
I mean, the problem with the Conservative Party is that I think a third of them really belong in the Liberal Democrats. Probably a third of them are true Conservatives, and a third of them are just, frankly, careerists that really are not sure why they're there and what they believe in. I think, unfortunately, the right-minded Conservatives are not making enough noise. And I wonder why that is. I wonder if it is because it's not welcomed by the leadership. I mean, we know what happened to one that did, Robert Jenrick. He pretty well got forced out. Suella Braverman had a terrible time in the Conservative Party towards the end. So it does make you believe that they really don't want to be a real right of centre party.
Yeah, I think they're still not quite sure who they are and why they are. I think just before we move on, we must move on to our next story. But just final comment from me. I think as a general comment, again, watching Parliament and sometimes being in Westminster, the quality of MP, just as a, not even, I don't even necessarily just mean one particular party or the other, but the quality of MP now is poor. And you particularly see this at PMQs. Many of them, okay, when you're new, maybe you should, you get a bit of a period of grace, but they've been in for getting on for 2 years now, and it's obvious at Prime Minister's Question Time. Many of them are incapable of asking a simple question, let alone giving a speech, without having it written down either on a piece of paper or on their phone, and then reading out the question word for word. Now, back in the day, that used to be frowned on. You were almost not allowed to read out your question. You had to you had to articulate your question. So, we've still got a lot of MPs who, frankly, can't even ask a question without reading it out, let alone making a speech. Okay, we must move on. And our next story, very topical at the moment, of course. This is from the Daily Mail, and it's about the crisis in the Middle East that I referred to in my opening segment. And from the Daily Mail, and the drone attack there. We saw one of these Iranian drones earlier. An interesting article by Mark Armand. The bizarre failure to plan for a blockade, and he's talking there about the Straits of Hormuz, means epic fury is heading for epic fail. And he starts off saying it's becoming clear that Donald Trump has gravely miscalculated his attack on Iran. Less than 2 weeks after American forces killed the Ayatollah Khomeini, and with hundreds of Iranian casualties and 140 troops US injured, a treacherous problem has arisen. Now, look, as I implied earlier, I'm not sorry to see the mullahs getting mullered. But Dinah, I've got very mixed feelings about this, as I said at the beginning. What about yourself?
Well, I think there's been lots of problems here. I mean, the poor Iranian people have gone through hell. They came out and demonstrated in January and got, we think, over 30,000 of them were killed by the regime. So understandably, they're a little bit reticent to come out again, which is a major problem. And it's a shame that the US and Israel were not able to go in and provide some kind of support then, but I understand that they weren't ready. I wonder whether the American first policy hasn't come into this, that as we know, the Americans frack baby frack, drill baby drill. So perhaps the oil price wasn't so much of an issue for them. And also, obviously, they wanted an element, or they wanted real surprise, which obviously worked for getting rid of Ayatollah Khamenei. Had they have tried to put together an alliance that then would have been able to defend the Strait of Hormuz, that there wouldn't have been the element of surprise. But I think there is a problem. Because obviously if Trump walks away and the Iranians are still shelling and bombing, they haven't won. The Americans and the Israelis haven't won. So there is a problem there, and I think that there has been some kind of miscalculation.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It would be easy to worry about what's going on. Is it going to reduce the whole region, not just Iran, into a state of chaos? I mean, wouldn't it be wonderful if the regime could be overthrown and the Reza Pahlavi, the crown prince, could return to Iran and lead a secular democratic country? I fear it won't be that easy. And
notice he's gone quite quiet, actually.
Yes, he has a bit, and I think he's still advising people just to stay indoors. I mean, I hope if it comes to a lightly armed civilian population having to rise up against quite well entrenched and well armed regime forces, I sadly I really can't see that ending well. I mean, I wish it well, but with misgivings, and I'm I'm not sorry to see the regime there getting a pounding, but I do worry about the wider consequences.
Yes, I think it's a very sad situation, because we all had hopes that Iran could become, the wonderful nation that it should be. Its people are fantastic. And we know that there's, I would say, a large proportion of them that really, really do want freedom. But whether the price is going to be too high to pay, I fear it probably is.
Yeah, I mean, if there's one country that deserves a break, it's Iran.
Yes.
And we can see here HMS Dragon, that's the Type 45 destroyer. Interesting bit of geeky detail. They all start with a D: Defender, Diamond, Dragon, Dauntless, etc. Now we were supposed, I just reference my opening. We were supposed to, back in the day, we were supposed to get 12 of these, and then it was cut, and then it was cut to 8, and then it was cut again to 6. And then they found out that the engines didn't work properly, etc., etc. They're very good ships when they're working, but we've only got 6 of them. So and it seemed to take weeks for the Navy to actually be able to get one ship to the Gulf, not to join in with the strikes against the regime, as I said earlier, but just to reassure our Gulf allies, our bases on Cyprus, and to safeguard our seaways on which we so much depend. And we wish them well, Godspeed, fair seas and following winds, all that sort of good stuff. Okay, we must move on to the next story. This is from the Express. High streets will vanish unless we go and use them. Very interesting article in the Express by Andrew Papworth about this, and he says many UK towns and cities get a bad rap, but they've actually got an awful lot going for them. Today, as I live in Croydon, it's often described as a crime-ridden ghetto, akin to the Bronx. And he's talking here about shopping centres, pointing out that even though we bemoan empty units and empty shops, many of us use Amazon. What have you found since you've moved from East London down to the West Country, Dinah? How are the West Country high streets faring up?
Well, they're mixed, if I'm being honest. But I have to say, moving into a new house, obviously we needed lots of stuff. And because where we live is actually a sustainable town, I would say, it's very busy. It has a market twice a week. It has sort of the shops that you need in the centre. And we pretty well managed to get most of the stuff that we wanted from our town centre. There is a out of town sort of shopping, but we go there less. But then it could be because we live very central, so it's very easy for us to go in. Where we were in London before, it was far more. You buy far more from Amazon, because the shops that you had along our high street was just very sort of niche shops, food shops, all sort of food shops, I would say, and really not much else.
Yes, I think are we seeing the demise of some of the smaller independent shops? I mean, I think there's a bit of a squeeze on here with business rates, with employers' national insurance, and hikes to the minimum wage, particularly for younger workers who they're sort of, my first job. Many people get into the habit, a productive habit of a lifetime of work via the hospitality or the retail sector. Many people's first jobs is working in a shop, serving in a shop, but the minimum wage for young people has particularly been hiked. So there's been this triple whammy of business rates, of employers' national insurance going up, of minimum wage going up. It's now a lot more expensive to give a young person a job, isn't it? In retail and elsewhere.
I think it is very, very damaging. And in fact, even though our local town is actually thriving, I mean, there are empty shops, don't get me wrong. There were, when we first moved here, there were several pubs that had closed, although there's still a lot left. However, since we've been here, some of these pubs have actually reopened and they're really popular. So I think in terms of the town centres, I think that independent shop can't thrive on its own. There's got to be a critical mass.
Yes.
In terms of the younger people, yes, I think it's a huge mistake. The minimum wage and the employing young people costs you the same as virtually as a more experienced, older person, because employers are not going to take those risks. And especially with Angela Rayner's employment rights bill, that you can't sack them either.
Yes. Yeah. No, good point. Okay, good. And we wish the high street well. Okay, so just time for a quick break now. Let's have a look at some of the other shows that are available here on Unprecedented TV. And don't forget, you can find us on YouTube, Unprecedented TV, and give us a cheeky subscribe. But now a quick look at some of the other shows that are available here. Okay, thank you. Yes, that's Dire Consequences with Claire Dyer. Okay, 3 stories left to run. And our next one is from The Guardian. And it follows the Gorton and Denton by-election. My goodness, what a by-election. Hannah Spencer, calls for tolerance and inclusivity in her first speech. Hannah Spencer, the Green MP who won last recent by-election, has used her first speech in the Commons to call for more tolerance and inclusivity. I mean, sounds good, but what do these words actually mean? And to argue for more people from manual working backgrounds. I think she's got a real point there. Yes, Dinah, presumably, I mean, what did you make of that by-election? It seemed a bit notorious, and it seemed to get publicity for some of the wrong reasons, didn't it?
Absolutely. And I think the main wrong reason was the Greens and the way that they campaign. I mean, we all remember when the Greens just used to care about the environment and do crocheting. Yeah. Now they seem to have taken on the whole of Middle East politics. I think that the Greens are very disingenuous. I remember seeing them years ago at a count, and I thought, goodness, where have they all come from? And they had half or 3/4 of their count people were Muslims, and I sort of thought, oh, perhaps it's a new independent party. No, they were actually attached to the Greens. So they have made a deliberate decision to move into this space and use Middle East politics to promote themselves, which, as I said, I think is quite disingenuous.
Yeah, I think the Greens, they're an interesting bunch, not necessarily for the right reasons. I mean, I think as you point out, Dinah, I think in the past they've had this sort of harmless, if slightly eccentric sort of image, chunky knitted sweaters and sandal wearing, tree hugging, talking about composting and recycling and cycle lanes and that kind of thing. I mean, they seem to be taking a leaf out of the Scottish Greens. I mean, they've really moved very, very firmly to the left. They seem to care more about Gaza than about Gorton or Great Britain. And they're very into all this identity politics and all this trans agenda. And they're trying to knit together this rather awkward coalition. I think this is going to be a problem for them. It may work for them in the short term to help win them a by-election. But mostly socially conservative Muslim voters and socially liberal, often younger, let's call them westernized Brits, for want of a better expression. I mean, that's an awkward electoral coalition, isn't it?
It is interesting that in the Gorton and Denton by-election, one of their policies, which is to legalise all drugs, including Class A drugs, was not something that they really promoted heavily there. And I think a lot of people that actually supported them, as you say, both socially conservative across the board, will not support them on that. So whether they can hold this coalition together remains to be seen. But I would also say that they promote tolerance and inclusivity, but a lot of the things that they promote, such as trans rights, which I don't have a problem with people that are confused about their sexuality. If they want to change, that's entirely up to them. What I don't like is that people getting very angry about it and demanding things from the general public. That is not tolerant. So I think for a party that preaches tolerance and inclusivity, as is often the case, they're not very tolerant themselves.
Yes, I mean, inclusion now leads to exclusion. Yes. And tolerance leads to intolerance. And we just saw there was just from the studio they put this very interesting campaign video. I mean, don't take my word for it. You can find it on YouTube if they haven't managed to take it down yet. With apparently in Urdu, but also showing on the video Keir Starmer meeting Narendra Modi, the Hindu Prime Minister of India, and the wonderful David Lammy meeting Netanyahu, the Jewish Prime Minister of Israel. Now, why would you show those two world leaders? I mean, to be fair, whatever you think of Starmer and Lammy, I mean, it is part of their job to meet other world leaders. Yes. But okay, so you can't, as we see here, he's meeting Narendra Modi, the Hindu Prime Minister of India. You can't criticize Starmer for that. Whatever you think of it, that's part of his job. Yeah. But you've got to question. Well, why would you pick those two world leaders, one Jewish and one Hindu? I mean, it is suspicious to say the least. Yeah. So, okay. I mean, let's see how the Greens go. I mean, to be fair, I think it was a significant win for them. But I think they should enjoy it while they can, because they're about to come under a lot more scrutiny. And some of their loony policies are, like leaving NATO, leaving their country defenseless, legalizing they want to legalize all drugs. They want legalized brothels. I mean, my good, how is this going to play down with some of their voters?
Although as a right-wing libertarian, we did argue for legalising brothels at one stage.
Yes.
In fact, I think I probably still agree with it as a libertarian.
Oh, all right. Okay, so let's move on to our next story. This is from The Telegraph. And yes, again, we're trying to go behind the news and look at some of the deeper stories here. 9 in 10 too sick to work. claim to have mental health. Figures reveal explosion in numbers benefiting from universal credit since COVID pandemic. Almost all Brits, it says here in the Telegraph, almost all Brits on sickness benefits exempt from finding work. So not just being off work, but exempt from even looking for work. Since the lockdown, say they have a mental health problem, according to official data. More than 3 million people are now claiming health benefits because they are deemed too sick to even look for work, let alone actually work, almost 9 times higher than the pre-pandemic level. Now, Dinah, just pre-COVID, Ian Duncan Smith and his universal credit had actually been working.
Yes.
It was one thing. I mean, whisper it. It was one thing the Conservative actually managed to get right. Shock news. And the numbers of people on benefits was going down. The number of workless households was going down. But since COVID, we now have this story, and the benefits bill is absolutely soaring.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you say it's one of the few things that the Conservatives actually achieved and got right was universal credit. I have to say that Ian Duncan Smith, as we all know, had an absolutely huge struggle to get them to accept it. So the one policy that should have been extremely conservative, they were very, very hesitant about it. But talking about this article, and obviously it says all this is since COVID, and not specifically COVID, but lockdown. I mean, this is what you end up with if you pay people during lockdown to do nothing, to stay at home. Where exactly did they think that this was going to end? And I have to say that everyone that supported lockdown, could they not see that it was going to lead to such financial ruin? It cost us almost £500 billion, which I don't know when we're likely to pay it off. It's going to be, I think it's going to be a worse debt than World War II.
Yeah, there were people who pushed for ever harsher, ever longer lockdowns.
Keir Starmer.
Yeah, and frankly, they need to own up here. The lockdowns did a huge amount of damage. The first lockdown in March of 2020, I could kind of understand that because we weren't exactly sure what we were dealing with.
Yes, exactly.
So I get that, and there might even have been an argument that it could have been maybe brought in a week earlier. But we're arguing a bit about the details here. So I get the first lockdown, but the huge damage that it's done, and one of the things that happened during the lockdowns was assessments for cases like this went online,
yes,
rather than in person, and they're still only done online, Dinah.
Yes, well, a friend of mine took a job. She's a trained nurse, and she took a job to do the assessments, and she had to give it up because she couldn't bear it. She said that was not a way to do assessments. It was impossible. Yeah, so she's gone back to nursing, which is good for nursing, but probably not good for our welfare bill.
These assessments, a lot of them now are done online. That's a legacy of COVID. And I think also I do actually listen to the BBC Radio 4 Today programme occasionally. And although you have to you do have to have your goggles on a bit with the BBC these days, but I do listen several times a week in the morning, and because got to get a spread of news. They interviewed a doctor, a GP, who was talking about so-called fit notes and this whole issue, and saying that there are, and it was pointed out that there are some doctors who never refuse to sign anybody off from work. And her point was, look, you're putting GPs who've got enough to be getting on with, enough to be worrying about, enough paperwork. They see enough people a day as it is. And really this responsibility of signing people off work, it's not fair to put it onto GPs. And we should get, and really the wider point is it needs to be done elsewhere, and it needs, I mean, at least with the GP you're seeing somewhere face to face if you can get an appointment. But very interesting that, she felt it was really unfair on GPs to put this responsibility on them.
Yes, I mean, I would have thought that you're going to need some kind of medical report to sign yourself off from work or be signed off from work. So I think GPs have always done things like that. I mean, what concerns me about GPs is that they don't seem to think that your general health is their problem, based on the fact that it's very hard to get face-to-face appointments with them. I think that what lockdown did was just give people the thought that you don't actually have to go to work every day, that if for nearly 2 years the government could pay you not to work, then why should you? I mean, there's also on YouTube, I mean, people doing videos telling you how to get around all these rules. I mean, I think
so-called sickfluencers.
Yes. I mean, I think that the only way to stop it is that the benefits have to be reduced. And I have to say that was one of the things at the end of the Conservative government. I think it might have been Jeremy Hunt, that awful period of having him as Chancellor, that he actually put up the benefits in line with inflation, when it would have been so easy just to keep them as they are. And people aren't stupid. If they're not getting a standard of living that they are happy with, they will go out and get a job.
Well, there was one year, was it 23, 24? There was one year when, because the state pension has got the triple lock, and because benefits are linked to inflation, everybody on benefits and on the state pension got something like a 10 or 11% rise, whereas people in work only got, I think it was on average 6 or 7%.
Yeah.
So people, I mean, that's just wrong. I mean, we can talk about the triple lock and all that sort of stuff another time, but I mean, that's just wrong. People on benefits, and they should not be getting a higher rise than the people in work whose taxes pay for the benefits and pay for the state pension. Okay, thank you, Dinah. We must move on. Okay, final story. And thanks for bearing with. And we will then wrap the show up. Final story from the Mirror. Princess of Ailes. Boom, boom. Royals behind bar, but Kate reveals she rarely drinks after her illness. I have to say, I don't know where you stand on the monarchy. I certainly love the Queen, and by the Queen I mean Elizabeth. And I thought she was great, and I think the Royals, to me, is the future secure? But I don't know. Maybe you're a Republican. I shouldn't assume, Dinah.
I'm not a Republican. No, I am a monarchist. I think that Charles has actually been better. I had severe doubts about him because he has his views. He's allowed to let them be known. I'm not a huge fan of William, if I'm being honest. I think that Kate is harder working and more solid. So I think with her, the future is stronger. But obviously one is worried about the fact that she has been ill, and my heart goes out to her, and it has been very, very difficult for them. But all in all, I do think I think the monarchy is a strength to the UK.
I do, and I think having a head of state who is above party politics, I think that's fantastic, and there's powers there that are denied to others.
Yes.
The monarch has a number of powers. I mean, the king ultimately could dissolve Parliament and call an election. I mean, it would have to be huge for that to happen. It's never happened before here. No. Well, not in recent times. And the monarch is also head of the armed forces, and these are powers that are denied to others. So clearly they're in a position of influence. I mean, I think Charles has been okay. I mean, the Queen again. I mean, Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, yeah.
She was an impossible act to follow, wasn't she?
Yes. I mean, yes. I mean, everyone loved her. It was, I mean, something that Charles can't emulate, because with Elizabeth, she'd, and like you, I mean, Elizabeth, Her Majesty Elizabeth II, the longevity. She'd been there for everyone's sort of major events. She had been there. So I think that sort of works against Charles, but I think he is doing a good job. I think that he knows what is needed. I mean, the big mistake that we know that Elizabeth II made was over her second son. And Charles is having to pick up the pieces of that. And perhaps the Queen should have listened to her son and heir a bit more at the time, because he was completely right on that with Andrew. One of the things that I do find that shows what an abysmal person Andrew is, that he hasn't just removed himself from the line of succession. He's making them go, or potentially making them go through hell to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was obviously a wrong 'un, and I hate to say it because I absolutely loved her, but I think the late Queen was maybe a bit naive with Andrew. But you know, it's not always easy for parents to, or indeed for siblings to see their children's or their other siblings' faults. Okay, well, with that thought, we will wrap up the show. Dinah, you're on X, aren't you? Where can people find you?
Oh, World of Dinah, at World of Dinah.
Yeah, Dinah.
That's it. That's the
World
one.
of Dinah. Okay, and I'm at Tim Scott UK on X. And our thanks to Dinah Glover and to Lembit Opik in the studio. And so this is Tim Scott on Tim Scott Uncancelled saying thanks for joining us again, and we'll see you next time.